Everybody, so I was just listening to a video by Universal Extinction. He's a part of the Pro-Extinction group. Basically, they're a break off from the alphalists. From what I gather, they no longer consider themselves alphalists because alphalists are not extreme enough for them. Because, well, Mendham says that he cares about consent and they don't care about consent. So that's really the only distinction between them and alphalists. I still think that they are alphalists. But I was listening to this video and I'm going to go ahead and play it. But there's a glaring contradiction of what they actually believe. Because based on what he just told me, they support extinction for animals, but not necessarily for humans. Okay, let me just play the clip before I continue running my mouth because there's a problem. There's a glaring inconsistency with their ethics.
As extinctionists, we believe that everyone has a moral obligation to end suffering. Just because you aren't going out and actively causing suffering and hurting people doesn't mean that you're moral. If you're willfully allowing extreme suffering or doing nothing to end it when you can, then that is just as bad as actually going and doing it yourself, because the victim still suffers. So in terms of what's bad, the suffering the victim goes through is what's actually bad. So it's just as bad. So yeah, you can't live in this world freely and selfishly and say that you're moral. When 99% or more of life born into this world dies painfully as babies, if you include wildlife, which you should.
See, there's some logical inconsistencies here or logical fallacies. I'm not trying to be too formal and, rhetorical with this, but they're making the same logical fallacy that because humans have superior intellect, that we have a duty to liberate other life forms, even if we. So it's not enough to just go vegan. We're supposed to be enslaved to every sentient life form on Earth. And they're going to justify this. I'm skipping ahead because I haven't gotten to chapter 10 of my book yet. But in chapter 10, I reject the notion that we should procreate in order to liberate animals. That is completely unethical. As I showed y'all, that woman who just got shot in the face 3 times, how can you justify that? How can you justify creating a human being who may get shot in the face by some ICE agents or be subjected to a lifelong of systemic oppression because you have decided to arbitrarily prioritize animal welfare? You're not just assigning negative duties to say that we should not harm animals, right? You're assigning positive rights to animals and positive duties to humans. Even if they go vegan, you're saying that's not enough. I reject that. I reject imposing life on the human beings in order to liberate animals. But let's continue because then I'm going to show y'all his comments.
So yeah, I mean, there's so much extreme suffering in the world that can only be prevented with extinction. So that's why extinctionists.
And let me just say this. I was on board with them at first because what they said makes sense. But now it's starting to not make sense because it's becoming clear that they don't actually support extinction for all life form. They only support extinction for animals. They actually support procreation for humans.
Understanding how much horrible suffering there is and will be in the future, cannot stand by and selfishly just live our lives without actively causing harm. Just because you aren't going out causing harm doesn't mean you shouldn't feel guilty. You're doing nothing
I don't feel guilty, and I completely absolve everyone who is going to be a part of the life abolitionism framework that you should not feel guilty. You don't have any duties. You're here involuntarily. It is not your responsibility to liberate wildlife. If you want to liberate wildlife, you can, but it is not a duty. That's something that you take upon yourself to do just because you want to be altruistic. You do not get to impose life on the human beings in order to liberate wildlife. That is unethical.
To end all this suffering which is all around you. So yeah, become an extinctionist. Do the best thing for the victims and the sufferers.
Well, clearly, he's a selective extinctionist. I'm going to rush through this, and we're going to go to his comments.
Help us cause the most vast and thorough ending of suffering possible. That should be the priority.
That should be the priority, but he's only advocating for ending suffering for animals. He does not care about ending suffering for humans. I thought this was something different. This is the same old, same old.
That is the moral priority. And that's why you have a moral obligation to join us.
He has not articulated what the moral obligation is. What is the basis of it? I mean, in my book, I explain what the basis of your moral obligations are, or well, at least a parental obligations, a parent-child relationship. Basically, if you cause a harm, if you create someone, then that creates a voluntary duty based on your relationship. And I think I already reviewed. I talked about that in chapter 2. That because you created a person, the courts consider that a natural duty that you voluntarily assumed. If you harm someone, then you have a duty to mitigate the harm that you caused. But he's not articulating what the basis of the duty is to liberate wildlife. That is a pet project. That is not a duty.
Fight to end suffering. Don't sit by and allow it. Don't benefit from it. What?
No. Don't allow society, don't allow these movements to benefit from your slavery. Don't allow them to guilt trip you to remaining enslaved so that they can push their causes while you remain enslaved. Reject this bullshit. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't fall for the okie doke because they're going to. I've been meaning to go over Ayn Rand and what she said about altruism, because the stock and trade of altruism is guilt. So they make you feel guilty, and then you become enslaved to the guilt, and then they can basically get you to do whatever they want. Really, no sacrifice is too great. You're basically, unless you give your arm or your leg to someone who needs to eat, right? You're not even entitled to keep your arm and your leg because somebody else may need it to eat. So you're supposed to give the clothes off your back. You don't have a right to live for yourself. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'm going to eventually get back to Ayn Rand and talk about ethical egoism, that you are in unto yourself. You don't exist to serve others.
What can justify allowing extreme suffering, which will continue for billions of
What can justify imposing life on human beings in order to liberate animals?
years? And the risk of it, there's always going to be extreme suffering and victims as long as life is around.
But he's only talking about animals. When I get to the comments, I'm going to make. You got to ask the white crescents to actually get to the heart of what they're actually saying.
So it's irresponsible. I mean, it's essentially we live in hell.
Why is he saying we live in hell? But he's not really talking about humans, though. He's talking about animals.
When over 99% of life gets tortured and killed as babies and children, they don't even reach adulthood, so they're not growing or learning from this suffering. It's just pointless, horrible, miserable suffering, disease, starvation, predation. The list is just absolutely endless of ways to suffer, and there's almost no upper limit on how much suffering and extreme suffering can exist or be experienced. So
okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to get, before I start losing people, I'm going to get to the comments. So I wrote, I strongly disagree. Parents don't get to impose life on the people without their consent, and then say it's their responsibility to fix problems which they did not create. If you're here involuntarily, you don't have a duty to fix anything. Your only duty is to escape your involuntary existence. I'm going to get to chapter 11 of my book. And then he says, disgusting pro suffering comment. No, he's the one who's pro suffering because they always come at this from a deontology. They never look at this from a consequentialist framework that the net suffering is actually going to be greater because they're trying to liberate animals, which is the ontological, that they're saying that you just should. Gosh, I have so much content I need to go over. I really need to get into the logical fallacies of uh, the definition of veganism and how they're actually going to they're causing more harm to animals for the vegans who procreate, but they're just going plant based. Like anti-nasism actually is a greater harm reduction strategy than veganism in the long term. If you're going to compare, okay, again, I'm getting hit on myself. I have a whole outline about that, but I just haven't had enough time to go through everything that I need to get through. But here's what I say, and this is based on my book. You are wrong unless people are allowed to suffer the natural consequences of putting more people on this earth, they will never learn. If you continue making the world a better place, by the way, when I said this, I assumed that he was talking about humans also. I didn't know he was only talking about animals. If you continue making the world a better place, you're giving them an excuse to continue procreating, which ultimately leads to more suffering. Your sole focus should be ending existence, not making the world a better place. Now, this is what he says: you prioritize consent over the greater amount of suffering equals you are pro-suffering. Get the fuck out of here. I don't care about consent. I care about consequences. No, I'm not saying I don't care about consent in general. I'm talking about in the context of this, of what he's saying. This has nothing to do with consent. Um, Obviously, I do care about consent when it comes to procreation because the person who is created um, doesn't give consent. But I'm talking about consequences. I'm talking about what is going to defer people from procreating. Right? It's not the whole consent argument that he's making. It's the consequences. So then I post another comment. You do realize that vegans are procreating and justifying it by saying that they are creating a vegan army. If people are creating more people to make the world a better place, how does that result in extinction? He says, LOL, obviously the anti-suffering team needs to be as big as possible. That's just obvious. So he has arbitrarily decided that the vegan team is the anti-suffering team. I guess the anti-natalists, we're just the red-headed stepchildren. We're not the anti-suffering team. Everything that they is so fucking arbitrary, and I didn't realize that they were. This is the same old bullshit. Um. So I asked. So you support procreation? Either you're contradicting yourself or you only want extinction for animals but not for humans. You don't end suffering by creating more humans to suffer. Gosh, man, this why do I have to state the obvious? Um because this is animal supremacy. This is a hole in their entire framework. They're not necessarily extinctionists. They're only extinctionists when it comes to animals, which means they only care about animal suffering. And they're trying to manipulate you and say, "Oh, you're selfish because you don't want." I guess we're supposed to continue procreating, and then we're supposed to live in service of wildlife. That is supposed to be the purpose of your life. And by the way, y'all, the reason why this is so important is because you need to prioritize anti-natalism over anything else, or abstaining from procreation, because they will gaslight you and trick you to think that there should be some exceptions. There's this group over here that can ethically procreate. You're going to remain a slave, and then what? They get a free pass. Nobody gets a free pass to procreate. Just because you're vegan, just because you think you're going to make your children vegan, does not give you a free pass. If I've already talked about this before, the way to increase the way to build vegan army is through proselytization. It is not by imposing life on the people without their consent. Now, let me get to what my book says about this because I'm skipping ahead right now. Um, this is chapter 11. Before examining why traditional anti-natalism has failed and how life abolitionism succeeds, one principle must be stated explicitly. You owe nothing to those who maintain your enslavement. You did not consent to exist. Your parents forced existence upon you. The state prohibits you from exiting peacefully. You bear all the costs of maintaining an involuntary existence while others extract value from your forced participation. I want you to understand emphasis on the extraction because he's trying to say that you have a duty. He's trying to extract. He's trying to get you to forget about your own enslavement so that he can extract, so you can live in service to others while remaining enslaved. And he's going to tell you that you're selfish, right? Um, Again, when I get to Ayn Rand, I'm going to talk about what she says about selfishness and how altruism is actually evil and unethical. The way that they have framed it, you're supposed to be a sacrificial animal. This means you owe no duty to. Let me talk about what it means. When I say this means you owe no duty to those who maintain your enslavement. This means you owe no duty to continue existing for your parents' benefit. You owe no duty to participate in systems that enslave you. You owe no duty to be productive, tax paying, law abiding, or compliant. You owe no duty to vote, work, consume, or to support institutions maintaining your enslavement. You owe no duty to be grateful for the gift of life you never wanted. You owe no duty to respect laws prohibiting your peaceful exit. You owe no duty to cooperate with the extraction of value from your forced existence. Emphasis on that last bullet point. Um, the debts flow in the other direction. Your parents owe you, the state owes you, society owes you. The public will support your right to exit only when you cease being useful to them. So long as they can extract value from your existence, they will rationalize, defend, and enforce your continued enslavement. You are enslaved. Therefore, you have no moral agency. Excuse me. You do not even own your life. Slaves owe no duties to their masters. Any cooperation you provide is extracted through coercion and is not owed as a duty. Any value you generate benefits those who support your enslavement. Your only duties are to yourself. I do clarify in Appendix A or B what this actually means. But I'm talking about positive duties, not negative duties. You do have negative duties, but not positive duties. Your only duties are to yourself, to liberate yourself from life slavery, to dismantle the system of life slavery. You owe no duty to make the world a better place. You owe no duty to help others improve society, reduce suffering, protect the environment, or advance any cause, no matter how noble. These may be choices you make for yourself, but they are not obligations you owe. Critically, enslaving yourself to liberate other humans or animals is inherently unethical, as Ayn Rand said or observed. The fundamental question is whether man is to be regarded as a sacrificial animal. The answer must be no. The fact that others suffer does not create an obligation for you to continue your own enslavement to alleviate their suffering. You are not morally required to remain enslaved so that you can help others. That would simply transfer your servitude from one master to another. Your involuntary existence creates no legitimate obligations. If you choose to find meaning, build relationships, create beauty, or contribute to causes you care about, these are choices you make for yourself, not duties you owe to those who force you to exist. The life abolitionism framework that follows provides tools for liberation, but liberation begins with recognizing you owe your masters nothing. Now, I'm not going to get into this entire chapter, but because I haven't reviewed chapter 11 yet, but I want y'all to know that the pro-extinctionist group, they only support extinction for animals. They support human enslavement, and I'm not sure how they can reconcile this. So they're going to tell you that you're selfish. No, they're inconsistent. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how they're trying to set themselves apart from ethicists. Um, I don't know why they're doing this, but Again, it's because they're saying that alphalists care about consent and they don't. That is an arbitrary distinction. This is not about eliminating suffering. It's a net increase for suffering because you're using human beings as a means to an end to effectuate your liberation. And they never consented. Okay. The whole consent thing. They don't give a shit about consent, so they're going to enslave you without your consent because they support procreation. So it's up to you. It's up to you to push back and not allow them to extract value from your involuntary existence. Don't let them guilt trip you. Don't let them manipulate you. Don't let them mind fuck you to say, "Oh, fuck my enslavement. I'm just gonna worry about pigs and animal farm." And again, I'm not talking about negative duties to not harm them. I'm talking about positive duties. You do not have positive duties to anything. That is not a social contract because a social contract has to be reciprocal. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here because it was supposed to be a short video, but I don't agree with what they said. I don't think it even makes any sense. All right, y'all. Y'all have a good day.